Okay, so I'm going to do a quick tutorial here just on how I did my 3D model, just to kind of show you where this is going. I'll open up model for my current version for my Velomobile. So you'll see there's a inner shell here and then the rib structure that's actually coming from this split of the finished extruded piece. And then I also, on the inside there, have the seat and the wheel well, but generally I'm just going to be talking through how to get this outer shell shape, and then how I went through and got these pieces that will then be a rib structure that you could cut out of foam, which is my plan, or some other material. But go ahead and get started from a new blank design. So essentially what I did is started creating a new form here, and this is this whole process is pretty applicable regardless of what kind of different software you're using. There's nothing really specific to Fusion 360, which is what I'm using. So what I did was I created an ellipse in one of the planes. I wanted that at the center, but I guess it's not a big deal. Actually, I am gonna redo that. Not a circle, ellipse at the origin. Go out from there. It doesn't really matter for what we're doing. I had specifically made this so that the widest point would be at my wheels. So this is actually going to end up being a little shorter and fatter than what I ended up making, but it doesn't really matter for what we're doing. So then what I did was you take this piece and you go to extrude and you pull it up however high from where you're going to need it to be. Mine was like about 60 centimeters, so we're working in, this is way small, so I'm just going to do this to 1/10 scale. We could scale it up later if we wanted to. So what you do next here, did I do enough faces? I didn't do enough faces. Extrude this. Sorry to redo this on you guys. I want to have more faces this way, yeah. Just so that you got a little bit more structure that it can build itself around once it's doing the next. We're doing the next piece, which is basically bending and shaping this ellipse structure into something. Next thing you're going to want to do is add a symmetry line if your software has that. This way, not duplicate mirror internal. So this is giving us that. I did this a little earlier. It doesn't really, actually I did this too early in the process. The next thing you actually want to do is go to fill hole and then make it so that it has this center point. You might have to do this by hand if your software doesn't have a fill hole, but you can essentially just pull pieces together and make faces or whatever. In Fusion 360 it has face and you can draw a face in by yourself, but this is what worked for me, is this fill hole method with a collapse in the middle. So now you have all these pieces, and now we will go ahead and do a symmetry line so that you don't have to. The reason you do this is so that when you're modifying things, since a Velomobile is inherently designed to have one line, one symmetry line, forget the term for that, mirror internal. So we pick these two faces and it gives you this line down the center. It's not back and forth because the back is different than the front, but the left and the right should be the same. So when I do something like this and I modify, it happens on both sides. So that's the point of that. So the next thing you want to do, I didn't fill the bottom of this. You might want to fill the bottom of yours depending on how you're planning on building it. I left it hollow on the bottom because I'm planning on just sort of retrofitting the bottom from however the top needs it to be. Probably not the best way to design something, but when software developers build physical things, they build from the top down, which doesn't make any sense, but who knows? Who knows if it'll work. But anyway, the next kind of major piece, and I kind of happened upon this sort of by accident while I was tinkering around doing this, but I ended up accidentally grabbing this center point, if I can get it, modifying it and pulling it up. So that's the wrong one. I'm going to pull that one down. There's a couple of these center points essentially. And then if I pull it back, maybe over a little bit. Oh, I didn't like that. Eventually you should be able to pull this thing open if I'm lucky. There we go. So now it's kind of open. Probably don't have the exact point that I wanted. Let's zoom in here. Let's keep going with this. Yeah. Nope. That wasn't quite right. Undo all of these things that I've done. Let's try that again. I'm super zoomed in here at the moment. Maybe we'll try pulling up these faces. Yeah, that'll work. And we'll pull this back a little bit. Going well so far. As you can see, I am a novice at CAD. So getting things to do what I want is not always what happens, but enough tugging and pulling, I usually can get there in the end. So we're kind of getting more of a Velomobile shape here. Not quite, but we got a cockpit, and we got kind of a back edge. So what I then did was just sort of took this shape from here and just sort of went from there. The next thing, one of the things that's helpful is when a shape isn't quite doing what you want, you can split it into two, subdivide, and gives you a little bit more wiggle room to grab things and pull when you're modifying. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't, but that's the general idea. So what I did then was sort of tug and pull at this. So you're just kind of shaping as you go. Bring this in so that you get these straight lines down the front where your pedals are, which you can then pull up, pull this one, whoops, not that way, pull it down So you get that kind of groove in the middle that you see in a lot of Velomobile designs. And then I would kind of pull this point down was another kind of aerodynamic feature I saw in a lot of models. So that's kind of the general shape, and you just sort of tug and pull that way, pulling things around until you have it the way you want it. So try to get this a little bit closer to what I had, so you kind of see, at least I can prove to you a little bit that I did in fact do this to get it to where it ended up being, but that's the general idea. And then to cut it and shape it, you basically so we're going to finish this form. So the next thing you do is in the plane that you want to cut, you create a solid box that goes around the whole thing. Mine were a little bit thinner than that. Call it, that doesn't matter, we're not doing this to scale anyway, but so there's that. I'm not going to do all of the cuts, but what you then do is this needs to be also extruded, because to do solid Boolean operations, I don't remember if I did extrude or if I did thicken. I think I need to do this in modify. Trying to remember how I did this. Maybe not. Maybe this needs to be bear with me here. Trying to remember how I did this. I would recommend fast forwarding through this as I try to figure this out. Yeah, it didn't like that. Well, that's not going to work on this body. I don't remember exactly how I did it, but essentially you need to turn this into a 3D body. I'm going to go to my real version of this, and I can show you the actual objects that are in there. So I created all of these bodies, which you then click this body, and you do a combine operation and intersect. I usually keep tools and keep components, and then you're picking the actual body itself, and then that will give you a new tool body somewhere down here. This new component that I created. So let's, that intersection between that box and the body turned out to be this structure right here. Let's close all this. Yeah. So, and then I made a bunch of these and then created sketches so that I could print them out to cut these into foam, but that's the general process. Slowly and not very well explained, but hope it's helpful potentially. Look forward to doing more tutorials like this and hopefully inspiring everyone else to build a Velomobile, although who knows, there's only seems like about 25 really passionate people out there on the internet doing it, so who knows. But that's a little intro to a Velomobile in CAD. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.